Hello everybody and welcome back to another product review video. And so this time we are going to talk about a product I use quite a bit, which is the Vallejo Liquid Gold series. We're going to kind of go through it. This is actually going to be a two-part. The first part I'm just going to do the general product review. As always, we will show you how it works. I've got kind of a model set aside over here. And we're just going to kind of talk about them in general, some of the ups and downs. There'll be a second part to this video, which will be a hobby cheating, where I really get into how to use them in detail. But, so what is the Vallejo Liquid Gold line? Okay, so you can see they come in these bigger pots. These are 35 mil pots. They're more expensive, obviously, because, I mean, if you compare it to, say, you know, some normal thing of Vallejo, which is like 17 milliliters, it's certainly a lot more. But in addition to that, they are an alcohol-based paint, okay? So perhaps at this moment, it's important to talk about what makes up your paint. So when we're talking about a normal acrylic paint, which is something like this, okay? And this is true, this happens to be Vallejo, but this would be true whether I'm talking about Vallejo or Citadel or P3 or any of the major paint ranges you're going to use on your miniatures are acrylic paints. So what's in this bottle? Pigment, acrylic medium, and water, usually. Okay? And that's what makes this up. Now, there's a few other odd cases, but for the most part, those are the three components. Okay? And that's it. That's what makes up paint. Now, with these, what you get instead is pigment and alcohol medium. Okay? And the alcohol medium serves to, the way it dries, first of all, alcohol dries much faster. But the way it dries, the way it interacts with the pigments to form the chemical bond gives you a much brighter sheen. That's basically the idea of the thing. It's called liquid gold because the pigment can be hyper fine, can be suspended in the alcohol medium, and can give you an incredibly bright shine. Okay? So, because this is alcohol, that is going to create a lot of challenges in using these paints. And so, as I said, we'll get into that a lot more in the part 2, but for now, I just want to cover the basics. When you're using these, the first and most important part of the challenge is that you cannot use water to thin these or even to clean your brushes. Instead, you have to use this, alcohol. So this is what I use, which is just like some Walgreens stuff I bought. It's 91%. You want to get as close to 100% as you can because this still has some non-alcohol in it. I just don't, I couldn't find, I think you can order 100% isopropyl online and stuff, but I'm lazy. This is close enough. I wouldn't use anything less than 90%. Let me just say that. I've used like 70% in the past. It doesn't end well. Okay? So you got to use isopropyl alcohol. This is how you thin the paint. This is how you clean your brushes. This is an absolute necessary component to using these paints. Okay? So unlike acrylic paints that you can just sort of buy and rely on having some tap water and going, these require an extra thing, namely that you have some isopropyl alcohol of an especially high alcohol content. If you just have some in your house and you didn't specifically buy that kind, it's probably 70%. Look on the label, it will say. All right, so what do these look like? So the first thing with these that I'll mention when you use them is that you have to shake the living bejesus out of these, okay? Like when you take them back off the shelf, because of the way the alcohol and pigment are interacting, they don't stay together. And when I say you gotta shake it, I mean, like, you better just put on some Outcast and shake it like a Polaroid picture, okay? Because this thing, you have just got to absolutely, like, as though you're putting it in a paint shaker, shake it up. If it's well shaken up, what it'll look like when you open it up is that. So we can kind of see in there. You see how smooth that is? Right in there? I know that's kind of hard to see. Okay, there you go. Now we're going to close it immediately because that is one of the other tricks. You cannot have this open for more than a few seconds. Like, you can't paint out of this pot. This has to be poured very quickly into a palette. Okay, like you have to put it into a palette. You can't use a wet palette or anything like that because that would be water, and those don't mix. And so you don't want to. I mean, alcohol and water will mix, but you don't want to mix those. One of the big issues, by the way, is it will rust. That's really why you don't want to get water on it. This is legitimate metal pigment that will rust if you use water. So even if it looks okay on your Mini at first using water, you give it enough time, what will happen is your Minis will actually rust like a car. Okay? Now, somebody might be thinking in their head, could I use that for a weathering effect to get real rust? I have no good answer for you. I don't. I've never tried such a thing. But your brushes will definitely collect rust. I will say that much. I've actually had that happen. All right, so if you leave these open for even slightly too long, and sometimes even when they're just sitting there, if they're not sealed absolutely tightly, which, by the way, I've taken to storing mine like this. Because if you store it like this, the alcohol, everything is at the bottom, and the water itself is acting as a sealant, or sorry, the liquid inside is acting as a sealant to any air escaping. And that has seemed to help. What happens if you don't store them properly, or if they do completely separate? So here is my green gold. I'm going to go through the color range in just a moment. And if you look, can you see that up top there? How that literally just, like right up here, how that literally just looks like liquid, and down here looks like pigment? See the difference? That's because this has completely separated. And no matter how hard I shake it, no matter how hard I stir it, this isn't going back together. This is Humpty Dumpty. Once it breaks up completely, what you get is something that looks like that. And specifically, when I put a stick in there, I can feel the massive chunks of pigment where they've clumped. Let me see if I can get a piece up here for you. It's not wanting to come up, of course. There you go. There we go. That is the pigment inside. That is not getting mixed back into that alcohol. Once that happens, this is a heavy paperweight. Okay? All right. So, this is now basically a glorified, something I can stick a Mini on top of, and that's basically it. Or something if I need to hold a stack of paper down in the wind. That's all that's good for now. Okay. So, we've talked about the fact that you can't keep them open for long. We have talked about the fact they're very hard to work with because you've got to buy a second bottle. You got to have alcohol around. What are the color ranges? So they make, really, when it's liquid gold is most of the range. I'll put the liquid silver and copper over here. Here I've got old gold, green gold, red gold. They also make just gold and rich gold. I have both of those as well. I just couldn't fit everything down in this space. They're all slightly different tones. Like if you put up the red gold versus the old gold, you can definitely see the difference there. This one's more ruddy. It's very much more pronounced in real life. Reds just easily get knocked out of the camera, but there you go. The other two they make are a white gold, which is really just basically silver. It's like a slightly gold silver, and like when I say slightly, I mean slightly. And then they also make copper and true liquid silver. I like both of these. I think they're actually both quite good colors. The copper is so rich. Like, I don't know if you can see that tone. But the copper is just the richest copper tone. The silver is just unbelievably bright and gaudy silver. So I actually find this to be of the least value, though in the hobby cheating I'll show you how I often use this. Okay. So, that's the color range. This tends, for me, to be where I go to for my golds. If you remember my first product review when I talked about the Vallejo metal color line, which is acrylic based. If they suddenly made, and this is all steel colors, and like just various colors of steel. If they made a range of this for golds, beyond just literally the one gold color they have, which is not even that great of a gold color, it's kind of flat really. If they made a range of golds equivalent to this, what they did for silvers, to be honest, I would throw these away tomorrow. And I wouldn't use them again. Okay? But they don't. And the reality is that gold paint in general is pretty garbage. Gold paint, more or less, no matter the range, even something like this. So this is like Game Air Glorious Gold. All of these acrylic gold paints I've used are pretty much junk. They separate easily, they're thin, they don't give you any kind of coverage worth anything. You have to undercoat in brown to make them work. They still require a crazy amount of shading. And in the end, they're not very bright. They don't actually get the amount of reflectivity that real gold has. When I say real gold, look at my ring. Look at this. That's not even close. Now, I know that I'm talking about something in a pot, okay? All right, well, that's fine. Let's just do this. I'm going to take a piece of this out, like just to prove my point here, okay? I'm going to take a little bit of this out, so let's keep my finger in the frame here, okay? Does that look anything like that? No. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right? Now, given this has highlights and all sorts of things in it, but this should be reflecting something, and it's not. It's just that doesn't... This isn't even close to this. And this is my problem with acrylic gold paints, okay? Is that in the end, they just don't live up to actually looking anything like gold. If you undercoat in brown and you really work with it, yeah, you can kind of get to something where you're like, yeah, that's kind of gold. But it's really just shoddy comparatively. Whereas if I take like just some of the old gold, okay, and I'm just going to literally throw that on my finger in the same way. That's right, we're going to paint on my hands today real quick here. So this was the old gold, which is my personal favorite. Look at that. I'll paint a second ring on my finger. I'm sure this is thrilling to my wife. I've married her a second time. Do you see how that actually looks like gold? Look at the way... Let's move the light so that the light is on a line between them. Look at the way the light hits this. Look at the way the light hits this. And then look at the way the light hits this. Okay? This is like you're painting with literal metal. It's unreal. This is garbage. This is amazing. Okay? That's why this is worth it. Is this an incredibly challenging paint to work with? Yes. Yes, it is. It will be one of the hardest paints you've ever worked with if you use it. Okay? I'm going to tell you that straight out. Is it totally worth it because it has the most beautiful results of any paint you've ever worked with? My answer is yes. Okay? But enough of that. Let me show you exactly what it means when we put it on a model. Okay? So the first thing I did is I keep some alcohol in a little bottle here, just a little extra bottle. So I can just, like I said, I don't want to be pouring out of that big bottle. So I put some alcohol just in a, into one of my, into my palette here just to clean brushes and stuff. And let's go ahead and we're going to move these to the side. Move those to the side. We're going to take our old gold, which, by the way, I do think old gold is the strongest, richest tone. Your mileage may vary. Red gold is also very good. And, honestly, the rich gold isn't too bad either. I just find it's a little more pale. I don't like pale gold color. So, my advice would be find the one that suits the tone you're looking for, as always. So, here we go. And you watch. Boop. There you go. Poured it out. Wipe off the lid quickly. Like, wipe off the edge here. Always keep a paper towel on to just wipe off the edge, so that way you get a nice clean seal. Back on there. Real tight. Like, you want to make sure that is rock solid. And like I said, when I store it, I actually store it like that. Okay? So now, I've got just some alcohol that I used to clean that brush, and I poured that in there. You need to thin it right away. So, I put about 3 or 4 drops of alcohol in there. Okay? And now comes the next tip, which is do not use your regular brushes with this. Okay? If you use your regular, nice, well, I shouldn't say regular brushes. That depends on what type of brush you're using. Do not use Sable natural hair brushes with these. Okay? What I keep around is just a set of these crappy Taklon brushes. Alright? So something like that. I'll actually open this new set specifically to do this. We'll pull out, so this is a brand new synthetic brush. I've got some other ones around, but there you go. Synthetic brush, okay? Because if you use your nice sable brushes, it's going to shred them. If you really want to throw away a Winsor Newton or a Raphael or something like that, more power to you. They'll paint fine with it. They'll just die. Because you can never really get all of this out of the brush. That's why. Once it touches the brush, it's in there to some degree from now until the end of time. So, we're going to just paint this wheel gold. Okay? Alright. So, little back of the finger test. And then we just apply it. Now, I might have thinned it just a drop too much there. I think I did. I actually got a little overzealous on the thinning. I thought I poured in a little more paint than I did. So we're going to thicken it up just a little by dropping in some more paint. But it is a good point that you can actually blend with this stuff too. If you thin it down with alcohol, you can actually get it rather thin and it will retain its properties. So you can do like layering and blending with this, but we'll cover that in more detail in the next video. All right, there we go. Mix that up. There we go. So now let's paint that on. And just look at that. Look at that coverage that you get out of that. It's just amazing. And here's the other thing about it. Because of the way this dries, first of all, it's so thin, but yet achieves amazing coverage. This paint is just, it's like painting with water. It's so thin, yet it covers as though you were just glooping it on. Okay? What that means is that you don't end up with brush strokes. Okay? I've painted a lot of models with this. A lot. I use this gold on more or less everything I've painted for months that uses gold. You don't get brush strokes unless you're just unbelievably sloppy. Meaning what you get, and that's one of the secrets with metal, okay? People will tell you with metals, if you want a good looking metal, it has to be thinned and you can't have brush strokes because metal needs to be very, very flat, okay? That's why people, when they do professional models and stuff, they spend a lot of time like sanding the surface down. Now, I don't care as much. So I'm not doing something like that on this Tomb King chariot. But if I was doing like a nice, you know, World War II replica ship or something, that was going to be some big ship, I'd want to take some time and like sand off the, you know, make sure it's like just the absolute flattest surface possible. Okay. So we can see, that's probably pretty good. So you can see these gold wheels. Goes on really smooth, right? Obviously, I'm not getting everything here. Let's do a nice flatter surface. We'll do the front of the chariot here so you can really see it because the wheels are a little hard to see. Let's do this big plate. Okay. And you notice I can actually kind of pour it on a little thick, and as long as I'm quick on the stick, I can just push it around. It's so thin, I can just move it around easily. And because it's mostly alcohol, it's going to dry up. It doesn't clump. It doesn't create these big clumpy areas of garbage on your miniature because you happen to go on too thick. Okay? And you can see how easy that just covers that over. I mean, look at that. That was over some blue and some bone. I did not lay down a coat of brown or anything first to get a nice rich gold tone. I just literally slapped this on whatever color happened to be under it, and it's going to turn it gold. Okay? So there we go. And now the front of that is gold. And you can see, look at how reflective that is. And again, you know, my test, my sort of, you know, test for this, and it sounds silly, but I always take off my wedding ring and I hold it up next to it. And you can see the reflectivity of that ring versus the reflectivity of this. Okay? They're very similar. It's not identical because, you know, it's I mean, this isn't actually metal. It's metal pigment, but there is some difference. So a lot of people I know, when they paint with this, they don't even bother to use shades or anything like that. They just literally let light do the work for them. Now, I'm not a believer in that, but we'll cover that in hobby cheating. But it is something you could theoretically do. So there you go. You can see the results of that, how strong that gold looks, how amazing it comes out there, right? One coat, it's on. You don't really have to worry about how thick it is. You never leave brush strokes behind. One other note, if you touch this paint to like this, to the acrylic paint, you leave it. You can't clean it up. If you try to get alcohol on it, like if you keep a second brush around, like let's say you might be used to like having, if you go over with paint to somewhere else, you can keep a second brush around, just dip in some water and kind of clean up that paint real quick. The second you touch anything else that wasn't supposed to be gold, it's on there. It's not coming off. If you dip your brush in alcohol, you're just going to strip all the acrylic paint right off underneath it. Go back, repaint over it later. So you do need to be careful when you apply this. Okay? All right, so these paints, what's the final verdict? What do I give them? They have a pretty good range of colors. The cost isn't that bad. These are, maybe $8 to $10 a piece, depending on where you are. They do die easily. They often die quickly. When you buy them from the shop, you'll want to make sure that you have a good one. That is to say, I would literally shake it up a lot in the shop and then open it, because I've bought bad ones before because they sat on the shelf too long. So it's hard to work with. The alcohol here will dry like in your actual pot, on your palette will dry so quickly. You have to constantly be putting more in. It's going to dry like that on your brush, so you need to keep your brush wet with alcohol the whole time you're painting. There's a lot of challenges to it. Why would I still say you should use this? Because you want gold that actually looks like gold. Okay? Not like this. So, in the end, I use this because despite all of its challenges, it produces the most amazing gold tones I have ever seen on miniatures. That's the simple answer. Okay? So I think that if you're up for a challenge, if you want that look of real, bright, reflective gold, these are a worthwhile investment. Like I said, I wouldn't worry about necessarily getting the whole range. I would start with maybe an old gold and a silver, for reasons I'll talk about in the hobby cheating video, but I think these are your two big winners. The copper, if you use a lot of copper colors in your miniatures, is also fantastic. So that would be my next one down the line. If you take good care of them, if you only leave them open for a few seconds, if you store them upside down, and you shake them, even if you're not using them, do take them down and shake them somewhat regularly. They will last you quite a while. They're worth the investment. But know that you are in for a challenge. Overall, my rating, solid B. If I was rating them on the quality of the paint they deliver alone, they'd be A+. But all of the challenges that you encounter when you're using them knocks them down to a B. So, for all that effort and whatnot. So there you go. That's my review. In the hobby cheating video that's going to come shortly after this, I'll get deep into I'll actually get into the use of them, thinning them, layering with them, etc. But I hope this was informative and you liked how that turned out. Again, you can see, there you go. Nice, dried immediately, and there you can see what the quality of that looks like, how wonderfully bright and gold and reflective that is. So there are they have an amazing effect. Hope you enjoy. Hope this review was useful to you. And as always, we'll see you next time.